Welcome to episode number 135 of the Marine Layer podcast. Lyle and I have some more Mariners trade targets to break down. We'll go down on the farm and pick out a standout Mariners minor leaguer. We have a Russell Wilson Umpire of the Week, and we'll close out the show with Speak Your Mind.
Here's your guys' reminder before we start the show. If you're listening to this podcast, do us a favor, download it, leave a 5-star review, leave a written review if you want to. It all helps us out. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the subscribe button, just click it, hit the like button. It's easy. It helps us out a bunch. And go check us out on social media too. After you leave a comment on YouTube also, I should add that in. Check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. 1-1 from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game is 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording Thursday evening, June 6th, and I'm here to report, Lyle, after a Mariners series victory in Oakland. Abraham Toro for the series, 2 for 12, struck out a couple times today. Bryan threw one of the nastiest two-seamers in on Abe today, and it looked like it broke his soul.
Is the fact that he's on pace to be a 3-WAR player breaking your soul?
A little bit. Just
3 wins. 3.
So just full transparency, he's not on this list of trade targets Lyle and I have today. But as I mentioned before we started recording, unfortunately, he's probably going to be on the next one.
I wonder whose fault it is that he's not on the list.
Listen, I was digging around and picking out. I thought we have some good names picked out today. But Abe, promise you, buddy, you're going on the next one. God, what a conflicted episode that's going to be.
Conflicted episode. Imagine if he actually gets traded back here. I know we've talked about that before. That's going to be one of the best podcast episodes we've ever had.
Yeah, I just don't know what I'm going to do. There's going to need to be a bit, but I'm not sure it is. We have run the bit this week. Apparently, I voted him for the All-Star game, and no one else. But that's just what I'm told online.
Well, that's what sources are saying. If it was tweeted out on our account saying, "Hey, it's TJ," it must have been you.
Did you put my email account in there too, so it reminded me that I voted?
Not that I know of.
Oh,
so
well,
you didn't get the reminder.
You missed out. You should have done that. Then I would have gotten the notification before you tweeted it.
Yeah. TJ wants Abe in the All-Star game. Haven't you heard?
That would be cool. What a story that would be. Tell 2021 TJ Mathewson. Abraham Toro is an all-star for the Oakland A's in 2024. It's in there. Really? Huh.
No, I do not think your response would be really ? I think you would go full Frank the Tank.
No, he's not.
No, you would just go full Frank the Tank the minute you see that he has made the roster.
Well, he's going to have to beat Mason Miller out for that 1A spot, so I'm liking my chances.
Well, there might be 2 with Brent Rooker.
Well, yeah, there maybe the Oakland A's with 2, bad Oakland A's with 2. We'll see.
I would like to throw this out there before we dive into some of the trade targets. So TJ and I were texting about this a little bit this afternoon, recording Thursday after Bryan had a 6-inning shutout start against the A's. Dude's ERA is now 1.07 on the year. What a stud, first off. But I want to propose this question to everybody listening, everybody watching on YouTube. TJ and I have differing opinions on this, and we want yours. So how do you do that? You guys know by now. Drop a comment on YouTube if you're watching. Send us a DM, whatever you want. If Bryan keeps this up, is he going to be an all-star? And my answer, shockingly as the optimist on this podcast, is yes.
So here's my thing about this. It's not that he doesn't deserve to be an all-star, because like you say, if he keeps up the pace, then he'd probably have a sub-1 ERA and what would it be, 10? It would be 10, 11 starts a month from now. So that's what it would be. But, like, that is an all-star caliber first half, and he'd probably get 1, 2, maybe more before the all-star game actually happens. So first thing is, so currently right now, unfortunately for him, he's outside the top 40 in American League starting pitcher WAR. That's I'd say a tough sell for a manager building a roster of pitchers. Managers don't all look at WAR, but you know what managers do like? Innings. And the more innings you pitch, the more WAR you usually garner if you're pitching well. I don't know if he'll have the innings workload to get there. And secondly, I don't know if the Mariners would want him pitching more innings in the All-Star game. They already have been very, very careful. They were careful with him again today on Thursday and watching his pitch load. He could have an All-Star caliber first half on the bump, but still not make it. I think that's where I'm at right now. What he's doing right now is pretty unbelievable. I'm going to be honest. He has changed his pitch mix a little bit, but it hasn't been a drastic change. He's, at his core, been the same person he always is, which is a fastball heavy, get a lot of ground balls, not going to rack up a ton of strikeouts, but he'll get them in key spots, and overall just not allow hard contact at all. And he's, again, with all these fastballs, and it works, and it still worked. And in a small 6-game sample here to start this season, it's been pretty remarkable. He has exceeded my expectations. He still has things to do and to work on. I think I pointed to you. He's still yet to really get through a third time in the lineup at all in his career. Like, get through multiple batters third time through the lineup. I think he did that today, but it was just a couple, right? What that next step for him of getting him forward, and that's going to come with a larger workload, which we haven't seen yet.
So that's all well and good, but I'm saying he's an all-star if he keeps this up for another month. He might not have the innings.
He is going to be an all-star, or he deserves to be an all-star.
Oh, no, I think he's got an actual chance to be if he keeps this up for another month. How can you be a voter? How can you be a manager if you keep this up for another month? You're sitting there with an ERA in the ones and say, nope, not an all-star. I'm sorry, but I think if he keeps this up, he's getting in. And now he is for sure, you're saying? I think so. If he keeps this kind of pace up. Now, here's where I agree with you. The Mariners not wanting him to pitch in the All-Star game and add more innings, even if it's one inning, is a warranted take. I think with that logic, the Mariners may opt to not have him pitch in the All-Star game, but that does not mean he doesn't get to fly to Dallas, walk the red carpet, dress for the game, be in the dugout, do the media sessions, and all in all, have a star next to his baseball reference page that says All-Star 2024. No, I think if he keeps this up, I know he missed the first month. I think he's getting in. I don't know how you ignore a guy that could have like a 1.2 ERA or something and say, no, he's not an all-star.
This sounds like something we'll check in on in the end of the month, because I think we'll have a better idea. A lot can change if he has a blow-up start. That changes his case. But if he doesn't allow a run for the rest of June, then he's got a pretty good case.
Okay. So once again, call to action to all of you guys. If you're listening, you can send us a DM. DM's probably the easiest. You could email us if you want to, but if you're watching on YouTube, go comment. Leave us a comment. Is Bryan Woo either going to be an all-star or deserving of being an all-star if he keeps this up for the next month? We want your take. This podcast is split. We want to hear from the crowd. So
the other bit of news, Lyle, is we floated the idea out there. It seemed like it made sense, but this week it finally came to fruition that now recently minted top 100 prospect Logan Evans, our guy, is moving to the bullpen. He had a great first 2 months starting in Arkansas, dominant, but the Mariners decided this week that he's moving to the bullpen. He made his first bullpen appearance this week, allowed one unearned run, a pair of hits over 2 innings. This makes sense. This makes a lot of sense for what the Mariners need, and it makes sense for where Logan Evans is at. I think at first I was thinking, man, it's a little early to take him out of the rotation because I feel like he still has more starter innings left in him. But he actually doesn't, because he threw 78 total innings in 2023. That includes his time in college, his time post-college in summer ball, and then his time with the Mariners. 78 total innings. He's at 53 right now, and there's 4 months of the season left. So the Mariners are going to have to find some way to manage those Logan Evans innings. And if they think, okay, well, he could be valuable in this Mariners bullpen, then let's use up the next 30 or 40 innings he has left this season and put him in the big league bullpen. And he's now on his way to do that.
I can't wait. First off, this is going to be so exciting for him. Imagine telling Logan Evans a year ago today, when he had an ERA that was not desirable in college, that a year from now, you're going to be in the big leagues. That's sick. Like, first off, just as somebody who is now a friend of the pod, that's awesome. But in terms of the Mariners' needs, man, this would be such a boost for them. You're talking about a guy that can ramp it up to 99 miles an hour. Honestly, we've never seen him in the bullpen. He's in the bullpen. Who's to say he can't hit triple digits? I wouldn't be shocked if he's going all out in appearances for an inning at a time. For a bullpen that has had a bunch of injuries and needs reinforcements, this would be huge. And it's a perfect way to balance the workload of Logan Evans, because he's started about as many games as you could have him start for what his innings limit will allow this year. Now, what could you do with the rest of his innings? You could have him either make a couple more starts or say, hey, why don't you pitch out of the bullpen? And because you are very clearly one of the 13 best arms in this organization already, you're getting into the bullpen.
Yeah.
So
Logan Evans, this is my call to you. Get ready for the mini mic question, because it's coming now. Especially if you are a member of this bullpen. I see what you guys do on a day-to-day basis and how much free time you have. You're getting on the mic.
Oh, he's getting on the mic. And knowing Logan a little bit now, I bet you will be willing to do it.
Oh,
I'll bet you'll be happy to 100%. Do it, to be honest with you.
Get ready for your top fives, Logan.
Yes. Now, here's the last thing I wanted to add. There have been some people all of a sudden starting to talk about, is this transition for Logan Evans going to be permanent? I listened to Ryan Divish talk about this on Jason Puckett's podcast just recently, saying, well, and I think Puckett mentioned it too, about the idea of, will this be a permanent transition? The way Edwin Diaz was transferred from a starter to a reliever, never went back. Matt Brash was transitioned from a starter to a reliever. They tried to let him work back as a starter the following season, but it didn't happen. He stayed in the bullpen. I've heard some people talking about, is this what's going to happen with Logan Evans? Is this just going to be a permanent transition? I don't think so. I think it's a little different with Brash and Edwin Diaz, where those two very clearly, even though they were starting in the minor leagues, I think most scouts and analysts said their profile is more of a bullpen arm. So, yes, they were transitioned to bullpen arms. What's happening with Logan Evans here, I think mirrors very much what happened with Dustin May and the Dodgers a few years ago. I think it's much more like that, where they said, look, Dustin May is clearly one of the best arms we have. There is no room for him to start in the rotation right now, but how do we optimize him and help him win this ball club games in the big leagues? Put him in the bullpen. When we need him, he's going to pitch out of the bullpen. And for this season in 2024, I think that's exactly what they're going to do with Logan Evans. In this offseason, he'll probably go back to being a starter.
So I think he's going to be a starter next year. But I thought Puckett and Divish made good points on this thing. Ultimately, players do want to be in the big leagues because the life is that much better than it is being in the minor leagues. And look at where the Mariners' current rotation is right now. Are you breaking into that group as a starter? Probably not. It's going to be difficult, right? And teams don't carry a sixth starter. So it is ultimately up to the team first, because the team's going to decide with a player under contract what they're going to do. But then it's the player too to either accept maybe a bullpen role to be a big leaguer more, than say, okay, well, I'm going to start. It could be a longer term, more beneficial long term for me, but it doesn't guarantee me a spot in this very rotation. So it's a balancing act. For example, if Emerson Hancock if he jumped to the bullpen and was throwing 99 with a wicked slider, do you think he'd be up right now? Well, I'll say if he would do that, Emerson Hancock would be in the bullpen right now. But as Emerson's he's not really a bullpen type arm. So at least not right now. Right. And if he was in the bullpen, he'd be at the big leagues. He'd be making a big league salary, flying on chartered flights with 5-star hotels, all these things that the players really covet and they work so hard for. So it's a decision sometimes. all comes back to say that Logan Evans, I think, will still be a starter next year, but I wouldn't say it's something that is 100% set in stone for everyone.
It's not set in stone, but I just think with him and how he profiles, I would guess he will remain as a starter. I don't know that. I can't promise for certain. That is just my guess and my opinion.
Right.
So.
And just because you're in the bullpen doesn't mean that you can't start.
No,
you just need to get ramped up a little bit.
It's harder once the season starts. It's much easier to go from starter to reliever mid-season than reliever to starter.
Yeah, you're right. So ultimately, those are decisions the Mariners and Logan Evans will have to make. But as of right now, bullpen for the rest of the season, it seems like, and I'll be right back in the rotation in the minor leagues next year, I would imagine, unless there's an injury. But we don't wish for injuries here.
No, of course not. And like I said, above all else, I think we're just really excited to now see him in the big leagues here soon enough. It could be by the All-Star break. And yeah, we're going to be fired up for him. So shout out Logan. It'll be interesting to see how his outings look as a reliever here in AA for the next few weeks. And I think people are now keeping a very close eye on him. So
let's get into these Mariners trade targets and let's go down to Tampa Bay to start. This was a guy we talked about in the offseason, Lyle, Randy Arozarena, a guy who could potentially be available with Tampa Bay hovering around 500 this year. For his career, he has been a very solid hitter. I mean, we're talking about a 126 WRC plus last year, 124 the year before that, and 127 in his first full year in Tampa in 2021. But this year, it hasn't been quite as good. He's got just a 79 WRC plus. He's striking out a lot. He is walking a little bit. He's hitting for a tiny bit of power, but his value this year has really plummeted. Would this be a guy who'd make sense?
Not the way he profiles right now. Not when you've got an OPS nearly under 600. And the rest of his profile, it's concerning, which is crazy to say about a guy like Arozarena, he's not a superstar player, but he's in that star category between one, he's just got the fun personality and he's flashy and all that stuff, but he is a very, very good baseball player. I don't know what's going on with him this year, but he's not launching the ball at all. Like nothing he's hitting's going in the air. He's swinging and missing a lot. Strikeouts were already part of his game for the most part, but it's been amplified this year. And when you're not launching the ball, you're not barreling up the ball. His defense has honestly been below average. That's a problem in Seattle, even more so than other places. And going from Tampa to Seattle with this profile, that doesn't scream success. And if it's not going to be a success for Isaac Paredes, who is having a great year, then it doesn't feel like it's going to be a success for Randy Arozarena.
I don't know if this is a case of Randy being washed or something. He's only 29, and he's coming off a year last year, which you could argue is his best. I mentioned the 126 WRC+, but he was also striking out the lowest mark he has in his career while walking the most. That's an ideal combination to have, all while crushing the baseball. Now, again, the strikeout rate, as we mentioned, has ticked up this year, and the strikeout rate has ticked up this year, and the overall production's not there. And like you said, he's not hitting the ball in the air enough, and he's not hitting it in the right spot. Like, for example, launch angle sweet spot is something Baseball Savant tracks. It's how many balls do you hit between 8 degrees and 32 degrees of launch angle, which is the sweet spot for a batted ball. He is in the first percentile in baseball at that. So the ideal launch angle for a hit, he's doing the least in baseball, which is troubling. But I don't think that's something that's unfixable. So you sit here and think of Randy like, okay, like could we tweak something here that could lead him, by the way, still has a good hard hit profile. He's still hitting the ball hard. That's not an issue. It's where he's hitting the baseballs. If the Mariners say, okay, he's not making that much money. He's making just $8 million this year. We'll have him for next year and the year after that. He's not a free agent until after the 2026 season. If we think we could acquire 2.5 years of a 29-year-old Randy Arozarena, we do one tweak here, one tweak there to his swing. He's already hitting the ball hard. He hits it in the air a little bit more, and then all of a sudden that production comes back, and he's still got the good eye here, and he's going to give us value by hitting the ball over the fence and by walking a bunch. Like that could be a way you sell it.
Okay, so we should have prefaced this segment, and just for those listening and watching that don't know, this is our under the radar Mariners potential trade targets. If you listen to the podcast 2 weeks ago, from 2 Fridays ago, we did all the A-level names. We did all the headliners. We did Robert, we did Vladdy, we did Rooker, we did Pete Alonso, all of them. So this segment and this podcast is more based around guys that would be a little bit under the radar. So all the names we're going to outline here on this show fit that mold. And Randy Arozarena right now is one of them because he's not hitting all that great right now. Here's my thing. If you had asked me 3 months ago, I would have said absolutely trade for Randy Arozarena. We said it in the offseason. You can only trade for so many guys. It's been very clear the Mariners not only need an immediate boost in offensive production, but need to get to the playoffs this year. They need to make something happen this year. And trying to toy around with a midseason project with a guy that's way below average as a hitter right now, isn't hitting for a ton of power, isn't launching the ball, isn't playing great defense. I don't know. All of a sudden, I've got cold feet about this, paired with I'm sure the Rays would still try to ask for a decent amount back for him.
But if the price is lower and he's the second bat you acquire, is that the worst thing?
Oh, if he's the second bat, sure. And if it's going to cost you somebody that's outside of your gold standard prospects, what I mean is that first wave. And you know, who do you want to qualify in that first wave? Cole Young, Harry, Laz, Belnine, Barmelo. I'll throw Ty Pete in there too. Like if it's somebody past those guys, sure. But if it's going to be what Randy Arozarena would have costed a couple months ago, and you have to try to fix a guy mid-season, then I've got cold feet.
Yeah. I think the way we preface this list of trade targets is most of these guys, if not all of them, would be the second guy you acquire. If the Mariners are going all out at the deadline to improve the offense, this is the second guy you're getting for this. There's, I think, one guy in this list who we think would be a potential number one, but the rest of this would be a number two. And I think Randy, at a cheaper price, the Rays, I feel like, don't have as much leverage as we would think because we know they don't like paying arbitration salaries, and his is going to go up again and again. He's got, again, 2 more times his salary is going to raise as a Tampa Bay Ray. And you and I both know they don't want to pay that, right?
No,
not
they
if
don't.
Randy's going to, not if they don't know what's wrong with Randy.
Sure. All right. So with that scenario painted, more open-minded, yes. If it's going to actually cost you a high-level prospect, then I've got cold feet. So, and if this is going to be the second bat you acquire. If the Mariners were to acquire 2 outfield bats or a first baseman and an outfielder, for example, I'm not saying any of these are going to happen, but if they were to acquire Luis Robert and Arozarena, or I guess for our sake, because we've talked about Rooker a little more since we have, concerns with Robert's health, if it was going to be Rooker and Arozarena, sure, then Arozarena is not the headliner all of a sudden. I'd be open to that. If he's the headliner and the Rays are trying to ask for top level prospects, no way.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. But nobody is perfect here.
No.
And if Randy was doing what he did last year, he would have been in our episode 2 weeks ago.
Sure, and Yandy Diaz would too, who's not on this list. Because Ty France is starting to hit, and we've outlined some other guys in that first base DH mold. But same thing, if Yandy Diaz was hitting the way he was supposed to be hitting, he'd be on the list 2 weeks ago.
Ty's been better than Yandy Diaz this year.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
Ty's been great. Yandy Diaz has not been great. That's why he's not on the list. But it is crazy how fast things change. All right, second guy we're going to get to in a minute. Before that, let's take a pause here. We're going to talk to you about our friends over at Pagach's Pub 85. One of these guys may be a Mariner at some point. Maybe you don't get to watch him a ton on TV right now, but if the day comes that the Mariners make a big trade, you want to get out with your friends and watch some Mariners games, you want to watch a new name Mariner in a Mariner uniform, head out with some friends and do it. Head over to Pagach's Pub 85. You can hang out. You can eat some great food, some great drinks. You want to play pool, want to play darts. You've got a bunch of stuff to do. Like it's your one-stop shop. And if you go during happy hour, drinks are $3 and $4, and that's from 2 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. So if you want to head out early, want to get some drinks, you want to watch the Mariners, we recommend it. That's all over at Pagach's Pub 85 in Kirkland. Guy number 2, another exciting name, Jazz Chisholm of the Miami Marlins. On the year, He has a 735 OPS, 8 homers, 107 WRC plus, 1.2 F4, and he currently has 2.5 years on his contract. How do we feel about this one?
Fun. This would be the most fun guy they could acquire
Mm-hmm.
easily.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a little bit of power. He's got a little bit of swag. He's an electric base runner. He would play the corner outfield. He hasn't played corner outfield, but I think he'd be okay at corner outfield. His defensive numbers are interesting, to say the least. But if you stick him out there in the corner, having a lot of fun, chain will be out, might hit a homer, toss his bat 1,000,000 miles into the air. And by the way, he'll be productive. Like, that's what you want, right? Ultimately, it's production. And you know, looking at the team across the aisle that you're going to be trading with here at the Miami Marlins, like, seriously, how much is he really going to cost?
Yeah, he's a 107 WRC plus guy. I know he's got 2.5 years of control, so he is not going to cost you a bunch of top level prospects in your farm system. Your farm's not going to get gutted for Jazz Chisholm, that's for sure. So, yeah, I'm sure that the package would probably be reasonable. And like you said, imagine all the flair he'd add to this team, to this city, to this region. It'd be awesome. Yeah. And selfishly, guy's a great quote. You think he wouldn't make great short form content if we got him on the mic? Oh, he would.
Yeah. So we should, if Jerry doesn't want to do it, we should do the negotiating with the Marlins. We'll do that.
I'm sure. Well,
I think it'd be worth the investment.
I mean, how hard can it be to negotiate with the Marlins?
Well, you know, how's that Christian Yelich trade working out? Exactly.
You know, what's funny, Aram put out that tweet, Aram Layton, who's the co-founder of Just Baseball and has been on this podcast. It went viral because the 4 guys the Marlins got back for Christian Yelich are now all out of baseball. One of them, I'm going to blank on his name. Maybe I need to look it up. One of them's now trying to play college football at age 28.
Yeah, Monte Harrison. Yeah, he's a former 4-star recruit. He's at Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. and that's who it was, Monte Harrison. And Lewis Brinson, who was the headline of that deal, is out of baseball. He's out of Major League Baseball, that's for sure. So,
but like Jazz has shown has like the potential to be electric. 2022 season was his best. He was an all-star that year, had a 136 WRC plus in 60 games. That was peak Jazz. Go back on YouTube, it's the Tavon Austin joke where you go watch Tavon Austin, West Virginia highlights, but no, go watch Jazz Chisholm's 2022 season highlights, because that was a fun season. But he's actually, if we're talking about this year, he's made some really quality jumps in areas you'd like to see. His quality of contact is up, his barrel rate is up, and his walk rate is up. Those are positive signs. I mean, his barrel rate is up there at 12%, 82nd percentile. That's pretty good. He's not a huge guy, overall not a huge power guy. And when you look at the Savant page, you see average, about overall, net average. But then you check at the value. Batting run value, 81st percentile. Base running run value, something the Mariners need, 97th percentile. Then fielding, he's average. Well, note that with the Marlins, he plays center. The Mariners should be in the corner outfield spots. And he, by the way, was a former infielder. If you dare to move him back on the infield, you could do that too. So he's versatile. He's fast. He's fun. He's got a little bit of power. And he's not going to cost that much. That's why I think this would be fun.
He's actually on pace for about 25 homers right now, which is crazy, but he is. So, yeah, all that combined, especially the fact that he can play infield and outfield for you, that helps a lot. I know he hasn't played second base this year, but if you need him to play second base, I'm sure he can do it. And like you said, if you can play center field, you can play the corners, especially if you're Jazz Chisholm. I'm sure he can play left field. So if the Mariners traded for him and had him play left field, I think that would be perfectly fine. And the 2 guys we've headlined so far with Chisholm and Arozarena, because they have club control, that is much more appealing, as we know, to Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander than probably a lot of the guys we're going to headline upcoming, because they don't usually make trades for rentals.
Can you just think of the personality difference with the current Mariners corner outfielders and then Jazz?
Listen, and that's no knock on any of the Mariners guys. Like, people are who they are, but yes, to your point of Dom Canzone, Luke Raley, Mitch Haniger, who are all, they're more on the quiet side, at least from what we see as media for the most part. paired with Jazz Chisholm, that's pretty night and day different.
Yeah,
Like night and day
had
different.
that thought pop into my head.
Yeah, that's a drastic difference in terms of the outgoingness, at least in public. Again, maybe in the clubhouse, all those guys are way different. We don't know that, but at least how they are around, I guess, the media or on TV. Yeah, there's a big difference.
And overall, like if you acquire him, so I said he's going to be a free agent after the 2026 season, but he's not that expensive. He cost $2.6 million this year. He'll probably cost $5 million next year, and then $7.5 million the year he walks.
Right,
it's not that much.
No. Now, if we're going to highlight a couple of concerns, which we probably should, I don't want to say he's a platoon bat, but he fares much better against righties than he has lefties in his career. You're talking about an 800 OPS against righties and a 625 OPS in his career against lefties. So, again, he doesn't platoon, but there are some somewhat drastic splits. And he hasn't been Luis Robert injured in his career, but he has sustained his share of injuries. So health is something to consider here, too. Again, because he wouldn't cost that much and he has club control, I am open-minded to the idea. I'm just outlining that.
Yeah. And would you say he's the best player right now in the Marlins? Right? He wouldn't have to be that anymore.
Right.
So, it was him, and it was a rise then him, but now I think it's just him. So there would be, I'd say the pressure would be on, like he'd be in Seattle to play, but it's not, our season makes and breaks if you stay healthy.
Right.
Which is different. Which would be different than Luis Robert, which the Mariners season, if they were to acquire him and then he would get hurt, would affect the Mariners season greatly.
To answer your question, he is the most valuable position player on the Marlins, that's for sure. Now, by Baseball Reference, because I just pulled it up in terms of team WAR for this year, there are 3 pitchers ahead of him: Ryan Weathers, Tanner Scott, Declan Cronin. But Jazz Chisholm is the most valuable position player on the Miami Marlins.
All right. Well, sounds good to me and Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
So I overall like the idea of Jazz Chisholm, and I don't think he'll cost that much. Now, if we go to our next guy, different profile, different personality, different structure. It'll be Mark Canha. We've talked, and a lot around the Mariners community have talked about Mark Canha for years now as a guy who could fit in Seattle. Talked about it when he was a free agent a couple of years ago, and now that he's in his walk year in Detroit, it's come back up that Mark Canha could be an addition to this team. 114 WRC plus this year, 6 home runs. He's walking a decent amount. He's not striking out. He's been worth about 1 Fangraphs win above replacement. He has been a remarkably consistent hitter in his career. What do you think about this?
As a secondary piece, sure. He is almost always above league average as a hitter. I love the fact that he walks. I love the fact that he is not a huge strikeout guy. Mariners need a guy like that. And he can play corner outfield. He can play corner infield. He can DH. He's got some versatility. I like Mark Canha as a player. But if the Mariners end the trade deadline and their headline offensive acquisition is acquiring 34-year-old Mark Canha with 2 months on his contract, that's the caveat that would have not just me, but probably a lot of people up in arms. I like Mark Canha as a player. I would like him if he's a second option. If you get him and a Brent Rooker, a Vladdy, whoever, but not as a headliner.
He's just showing telltale signs of aging. Like his slugging has gone down every season as he's gone into his 30s, and he's just slugging .387 this year. And that doesn't take away from the fact, again, he's still an above average hitter by WRC plus and by a good amount at 114. But that's mostly because he walks a bunch, and it's helped him maintain a .350 on base percentage every season since 2019. It's not something you just make up. And looking at the rest of the Mariners lineup, they don't have a lot of .350 on base percentages in that lineup. So he would certainly be on and ahead of guys to hit him in, which would be good. But his defense isn't great. He's primarily a much better hitter against lefties. Is about a league average hitter against righties. And there's just not too much else you can do as a rental. I mean, he would come in to supplement and be a right-handed hitting, corner outfielder that you could have. You would essentially trade for him and want him to be better than Mitch Haniger, which right now he is. But both are in their mid-30s. So what if Canha gets to August and September and the wear and tear catches up, and he slumps and struggles, as a lot of older players do. It's just hard to maintain sometimes. So if you think in August and September, Mark Canha is a better player than Mitch Haniger, then that works. Mm-hmm. But if you're not sold, you think the age might catch up to him, I don't know if that works.
Well, unless you've got anything else on Mark Canha, there's an option for a rental outfielder who's a little bit younger, who might be more intriguing, and many of you know his name. It's Tyler O'Neill. For the year, the former Mariners prospect has an 847 OPS, 11 bombs, 131 WRC+, 0.8 F/WAR, also a free agent at the end of the year, and younger than Mark Canha. Now, this dude hits the ball with absolute force. His batted ball profile is awesome. He hits for a ton of power. He's maybe more in shape than any player in baseball. However, the one thing that stands out is the same issue the whole Mariners team is having, not just last year, but this year too. Strikeouts through the roof. Tyler O'Neill is striking out 33.5% of the time. So, how do you feel about this one?
He might be one of the biggest, outside of Joey Gallo, 3 true outcome guys in baseball at this point. So, strikeout rate's 33%. He's got his highest ISO of his career, and he's walking a bunch, right? He's walking almost 13% of the time. So, if you like action, he's probably not your player. So he's going to just try and mash the ball in the air and pull it a bunch. Here's a problem, Lyle. What version of Tyler O'Neill would the Mariners get? In April, he put up an Aaron Judge, Barry Bonds-esque 206 WRC+. But then in May, before he got hurt, just came off the IL yesterday on Wednesday, he had a 45 WRC+. Who are they getting? Right? You're not trading for Tyler O'Neill to put up a 45 WRC+ on your roster, because the Mariners already have that if they wanted it.
This just feels like too streaky and too risky of a player for somebody like Jerry Dipoto or Justin Hollander to trade for. He's had overall a good year, anchored by a phenomenal April. If the Mariners had traded for him before the year, you could have guaranteed yourself a home run on opening day, considering he home runs on opening day. He hits a home run on opening day every year. But if you're talking about you need him for half a season or 2 months, doesn't feel like the most sustainable guy in the world you'd trade for. Honestly, between him and Mark Canha, the Mariners would probably be more inclined to trade for Canha.
I agree. And I'm worried if he would even fit into T-Mobile Park. How much do we have to hear complaining about how fly balls don't carry in T-Mobile Park? Well, Tyler O'Neill this year has the highest fly ball percentage and lowest line drive and ground ball rate of his career this year. So he is selling out for fly balls. Well, it just so happens that T-Mobile Park is the worst possible park to hit a fly ball in. Does that fit? No, not really.
It's a little better in the summer.
A little bit, yeah. But still not great. Even when it warms up, it warms up everywhere else too.
Yeah,
so
this feels like a little too polarizing a player for Jerry and Justin to go trade for, and for a guy that you're not really going to know what you're getting.
And it's not just this year that he's been Jekyll and Hyde. Just look at how his career was. He in 2021, he had his major breakout. He's great in the field. He had a 143 WRC+. And then the last 2 years in St. Louis, he was a league average hitter. Mm-hmm. So who are you getting? Right? Everyone thought Tyler O'Neill was going to be a star in 2021 after that, but he couldn't get it. I know things didn't really work out in the Cardinals organization. It was a really weird relationship, but I mean, even this year it's been up and then it's been down, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So if you catch him on his 2-month hot streak at the end of the season, then Jerry Dipoto will look like an absolute genius for swinging this trade. Because to be honest, Lyle, if you think about it, right-handed hitting power for consistently for 2 months is something the lineup could use, but you're not guaranteed to get it.
No, again, this just doesn't feel like the player they would trade for. No matter what, whether he's hot or not, you're getting a ton of strikeouts. And I don't think the Mariners, or any fans for that matter, can put up with any more strikeouts, especially if strikeouts are going to go up by acquiring Tyler O'Neill.
How about a less boom or bust outfield option and a more consistent offensive player? How about Michael Conforto, 31-year-old outfielder for the San Francisco Giants? He has a 126 WRC plus this year. He's a rental making $18 million this year. Average strikeout rate, average walk rate, hits a ton of line drives, is not an over-the-top power guy. What do you think about this?
And Seattle royalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to Redmond High School, which is not our rival. It's not Lake Washington High School's rival. It would be like, I guess it would almost be like your interleague rival, because Lake Washington and Redmond were in different regions, like 3A, 4A. It would almost be like how the Yankees' main rivals, obviously the Red Sox, but then it would kind of be like the Yankees Mets thing. That's like what Lake Washington and Redmond High School are like. Anyway, Michael Conforto, as a baseball player, as a professional baseball player, yeah, sure, for half a year, this could make a lot of sense. Now, something you're going to have to take into account, he has been platoon-ish in his career. I'm not saying he always gets used as a platoon bat, but his lefty-righty splits have some fluctuation in his career. But even with that, even though he's much better against righties than lefties, he hits. And if you need a secondary bat that can play some outfield, play some DH, it's a lot of left-handed outfielders, but it's a guy that could make some sense.
The lefty outfield stacking thing is real, because as of right now, the Mariners don't need a lefty outfielder, which, it would just be kind of weird to carry 3 left-handed hitting corner outfielders. Doesn't really fit on a roster, and doesn't fit for how the Mariners manage and structure their roster around a matchup. There's another interesting thing. He's walked a bunch in his career, over 10% of the time for his career, but it's down this year. He was only a league average hitter last year, and the year before that, he missed the entire season with what I believe was a shoulder injury. He's not the healthiest guy in the world, and he's not a good defender in the outfield. So the bat itself right now looks good, but remember, he's on the other side of 30. He's had injury issues in the past, and he's not a great defender. So this feels like, if they were really going to trade for him, does this almost feel like he would be a DH?
Sorta. And again, the reason I'm somewhat open-minded to it is I do like the fact he can barrel it up. I do like the fact he doesn't strike out a ton. Just if I know the left-handed corner outfield thing is going to get crowded. I'm just thinking of, how do you get the offense better with a secondary piece? Conforto has a chance to do that. Yes, you would force guys like Canzone or Raley, or even maybe Conforto, to start facing lefties more. But I still feel like it's worth the consideration, considering, again, Michael Conforto is having a good year this year. I know his walks are down, but he is having a good year and he barrels it up.
Yeah, so I think it would work. The other thing to note, as he's one of 2 Giants on this list, Giants are right in the thick of the wild card race right now. Mm-hmm. So doesn't necessarily mean he would be available, but he would not cost that much.
No, not for half a year. Oh, I should clarify too, in case I didn't make it clear. Michael Conforto is way older than the two of us are. I never played him in high school or anything like that when I was bringing up the high school thing, because he went to high school way before we were in high school. It was just, he went to the secondary rival school. That's all. But yeah, I'd be open to this. Again, it would cause some maneuvering on the roster, and it would cause Scott Service and Jared Dipoto to have to think of some, tweaked strategies for how to best put out a lineup every day. But if this is the guy that's available and you need 2 bats, or you feel like you do, 1 top level guy and 1 secondary level guy, I'm not saying it's the guy at the top of your list, but he has been productive. He won't cost a lot. Could be worth a thought.
Now, some may think Michael Conforto would be the best hitter of this group. I actually think the last 2 guys are the 2 best hitting options, pure hitting options, that the Mariners could go out and trade for on this list of secondary options. But before we get there, guys, summer is here, and that means it's time to get out to T-Mobile Park and watch the M's. Want to get out there, hang out with us, grab a drink, and watch the game with your friends? Let Game Time help you get there with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The Mariners are back at home against the White Sox on Monday. When you're looking for the best deal to get in, use the Game Time app. Checking it out here, looks like you can get tickets to all 4 games next week for under $7. Get a panoramic view of your seat and toggle the all-in pricing feature so you know how much you are paying and what the view is before you buy. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code JUSTBASEBALL, JUSTBASEBALL, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's go north of the border for our penultimate guy on this trade list, Lyle. A catcher, Danny Jansen. He's scheduled to be a free agent after this season. He's split time catching with Alejandro Kirk the last few years, and this dude mashes a 142 WRC plus this year. He was at 116 last year and 141 in 2022. This dude hits, and I honestly think this guy, the value of bringing this guy over to split time with Cal Raleigh would be immensely valuable.
He's got nearly 1.5 F/WAR in 33 games. He's been good. He's been very good. Here's my retort. How do you manage having 3 catchers on the roster that all need playing time? Right now, it's a little bit different because, yes, they have 3 catchers on the roster, but Sebi Zavala feels like he's been in the doghouse for a bit. He's on the roster. He's barely playing. So if you were to alter that and have Cal Raleigh, Danny Jansen, and Mitch Garver all on the roster, how do you get all those guys in the lineup enough?
I think this trade would make a lot more sense if Mitch Garver starts hitting the cover off the ball the next 2 months leading up to the deadline. Therefore, you feel very comfortable that he doesn't have to go back behind the plate and that you can essentially, it's like addition by not even addition by subtraction, but you would manage, you could justify trading to have Cal split time. And then you could swap guys out of the DH spot as you have the left-handed hitting Cal and then the 2 right-handed hitters, Jansen and Garver. And ultimately, while besides the fact of taking some of the stress off of Cal, this dude just gets so beat up back there, especially as the season wears down. He's going to need off days. He's going to need rest days. And I think Jansen in his 142 WRC plus can be the guy to do that.
Look, there's a lot of reasons it makes sense. It's another guy that would be a rental, so he probably wouldn't cost that much. I don't think the Blue Jays can get that much back for him. And I love the fact that he walks about 11% of the time. I love the fact that he is a 15% strikeout rate guy. Talk about a boost for the Mariners in that department. It's just, again, how do you manage the 3 catchers? You can do it. And you're right. If Mitch Garver really gets going here in the next 6 weeks, this conversation gets much more real. But like every guy on this roster, there is some, I don't want to say holdback, but some caveat. So there is just a thought of how do you manage it all?
How would you manage it on your roster? Your current roster would be really the question, because Jansen's played part-time pretty much his entire career. So it would be nothing new to him.
That's true.
Not playing every single day. He's managed to be this productive, not facing pitchers every single day, which is remarkable. And even Cal's like, man, you guys traded for another catcher? It's like, well, no, Cal knowing that Danny Jansen's not going to be a Seattle Mariner next year. Highly unlikely he would be a Mariner next year. This would be a 2-month arrangement. But he swats homers, walks, doesn't strike out a whole lot. He's really a dead pull guy. Really. He's like a Brian Dozier level home run hitter. Pulled fly balls. So it works out. But I like this idea because I think it would benefit Cal so much to have Danny Jansen there. Just take the pressure off him a little bit.
So maybe you could operate like this. Cal catches behind the plate 4 days a week. Jansen catches 3 days a week, and then additionally you get Cal 1 DH day in addition to the 4 days behind the plate.
Sounds right.
That would probably do a lot for Cal Raleigh, keep him less banged up.
And that would still give Mitch Garver at least 5 days hitting.
Mm-hmm.
If he's hitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is contingent on Mitch Garver hitting, right? Because we know Mitch Garver's not getting jettisoned off the roster because he makes a lot of money. So if the backup catcher position is open and Garver's not occupying it because he's not hitting, I think Jansen makes a lot of sense. Like, just if you think about it in the sense right now of how the Mariners are operating, would you rather have Sebi Savala or Danny Jansen on the roster? Right. There you go.
Yeah, it's Jansen.
Yep.
So sure. Yeah, it's a decent idea. Now, I would hope that would fire people up if the Mariners' deadline was they traded for Brent Rooker and also traded for Danny Jansen. That's a pretty good deadline. That's 2 real bats that you acquired.
Is it a hot take to say this would be the most realistic Toronto Blue Jays trade option?
No, it wouldn't, because the Mariners aren't going to want to give up a huge package for either Vladdy or Bichette, I would assume. Now, Vladdy's heating up, but so is Ty France. So how much the Mariners want to trade for a first baseman with no defensive value, no value on the base pads when you have a first baseman playing very, very well, we'll see. But for 2 months of Danny Jansen, 2 months of essentially a backup catcher, how much can that even cost? Probably very little.
Very little, yeah. Or again, already plays half the time.
Right.
So,
yeah, it would make a lot of sense. Danny Jansen, for a few years now, has been the best number 2 catcher in baseball. There was a year that people were talking about him and Kirk as both top 10 catchers, even though they split time.
Right.
So
now, notice we're not talking about Alejandro Kirk because he has not played as well.
No, he hasn't. You know a guy who has played well, though? Last guy on the list. We saved him for last. In terms of underrated trade targets, I think this is the one we're most fired up to talk about. LaMonte Wade Jr. of the San Francisco Giants. Late night Lamont for the year. He has corralled an 896 OPS. He's got 2 bombs, but don't let that fool you. 168 WRC plus and an F-WAR of nearly 2. He's got a year and a half of club control. He has been the Giants' best hitter. Go look at his Savant page, people. You want a fun exercise? Go on to LaMonte Wade's baseball Savant page and pull it up, because it is, we've used the term bright red Kool-Aid on this podcast before. That's what his Savant page looks like. It is bright red. So how are we feeling?
Let's put to some context of how good his Savant page is. At the time of this tweet from Michael Fisher of Codify, so he listed out how many 100th percentile StatCast rankings you have on your page. And he listed, it was a ranking of players in baseball. So Aaron Judge leads all of baseball. He has 9. Juan Soto is second. He has 6. Should be unfair. The Yankees have the top 2, but is what it is. Bobby Witt and Luis Ariz each have 3. And then at 2, the list goes Shohei Ohtani, Giancarlo Stanton, O'Neal Cruz, and LaMonte Wade. Sounds like a group you would want to be a part of. This is the best guy on this list.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a problem here. So I mentioned above with Michael Conforto. The Giants are in the playoff hunt right now. They are 500, a 500 team that is right there for the 3rd wild card in the National League. Time will tell whether they will be there in 2 months, but the 3rd wild card offers a lot of optimism to teams. So not only is LaMonte Wade under contract next year as well, meaning the Giants don't have to deal him if they don't want to, but he's also their best player. So asking a contending team to trade their best player in the middle of a playoff chase is a steep ask. And with the Giants not being pushed into a corner, with him not being a free agent until after next season, the price for a platoon bat, pretty much, if what LaMonte Wade has done, he's only had 12 at-bats against lefties this year as a left-handed hitter. Doesn't that seem like a little much?
Here's the only thing I'd say. I know the Giants are within a couple games of the wild card, They're also 3 under 500. And look, the NL wild card has been awful this year. That third wild card specifically, terrible. I will be interested to see what that wild card standings page looks like at the end of July. If anybody's gotten hot, if anybody's caught fire and created some separation, I don't know. But if the Giants are really trying to get the last wild card spot with a 78-win season, that doesn't feel like a team that's winning the World Series. That doesn't feel like a team that's getting past the wild card round. They might get swept in 2 games in the wild card round. So if they don't really think they have the talent to do anything, would they really be that hesitant to trade LaMonte Wade? It's like the Mariners, for example, right? We know why the Mariners traded Paul Sewald last year. Some people understood it. Most people understood it. There were still people that were unhappy with it out there in the Mariners world. But despite being a contending team, the Mariners still made that trade. So could the Giants be that sort of team this year where, sure, they're contending by definition, but they still go out and trade away some established players?
Nothing's impossible. Really?
If they're going to win, if they're going to win 78 games, I don't see why they're so inclined to hold on to LaMonte Wade.
Here's a question I have. I'm wondering what his value will be 2 months from now. Because let's give some context. Right now, he's hurt. He'll probably be out the rest of this month. Right? I forget exactly what he hurt, but it was a 4-week minimum injury the last week of May. So that puts him back on the Giants roster end of June. Also, he's been a little lucky this year. Not going to lie. It helps that he walks 20% of the time. It shrinks the sample size, but his BABIP is over 460. It's a little high. It's a little. It just tells you that there's some regression in this profile. Now, still doesn't mean he's not hitting the ball at the best quality possible, which he is. Baseball Savant says so. But I will say it doesn't. Because he's hitting like Barry Bonds a little bit this year, does not mean he's going to keep it up when the team pays the price of what he's currently hitting and what he actually does when he arrives on his new team, if he gets traded.
So he has a grade 2 left hamstring strain, for those that are interested. That'll keep him out a couple weeks, like you said.
Yeah.
Also, the 20% walk rate is crazy. 20%? That's nuts. Now, that probably won't sustain. The BABIP probably won't sustain. And there are questions of, say LaMonte Wade's the secondary bat you acquire, right? This would be the best secondary bat you could probably acquire.
That would be a pretty insane secondary bat.
Oh,
I will note, this is the one guy, and I mentioned at the beginning, there's one guy who you could argue would be a number 1 bat, and it would be LaMonte Wade.
Okay, then if he's the only bat you acquire, if he's the headline bat you acquire, that makes this a little different. But I was going to say, if you acquire LaMonte Wade and Brent Rooker, if you acquire LaMonte Wade and Vladdy, that does make some things tough to assemble with the roster. You'd probably move on from Haniger one way or another if you trade for an outfield bat. But then if you trade for, again, if you essentially flip out, let's say Wade for Haniger, then you've got a lot of left-handed bats all of a sudden. And if you were to acquire someone like Vladdy, how does that work with Vladdy, Wade, Ty, and Garver? So, yeah, you're right. If they were going to acquire LaMonte Wade, LaMonte Wade might be the guy they acquire if they strike out on all the real A-level bats, but still want some impact at the deadline, and they settle for him, because then you can manage it.
Yeah, so then it would be Ty, Garver, and Wade you would have to find time for. And he's played in the outfield a little bit. So I think it's mostly been first base this year, but it doesn't mean he can't play in the outfield. You wouldn't be great in the outfield, but he could. He'd be there.
And you could get him some DH days too by putting Garver at the backup catcher spot or giving Garver a day off. Yeah, right. You could make that work by just acquiring LaMonte Wade. But if you have Wade and you try to acquire another A-level bat, I mean, it would make the team great. That would be awesome because you would get 2 really good bats. How the Mariners would manage that roster-wise, I don't know. And for that reason, I don't know if they'd give up the prospect package that it would cost for each of those guys at once.
I think it would cost a lot to get LaMonte Wade out of San Francisco.
I think
it wouldn't cost what you would pay for Vladdy, but based on where his stock is right now, yeah, I think so.
All right.
So
I don't
just to think of
I don't know.
In the end, if you're trading for him again, I think you're right. So Garver would slide to the backup catcher role. I think LaMonte Wade would DH a good chunk of time. And
get
Ty
some
would be
additional,
first.
get some additional days at first in the outfield when you have to have him there, but probably he would mostly be DHing against right-handed pitching. Yeah.
Right. So it's just if you talk yourself into potentially sending a blue chip prospect to San Francisco for LaMonte Wade, because hitters like this, or not even all the A-tier guys that we talked about are hitting like this.
It's true, but you still feel like he would cost a blue chip prospect? I don't know.
The Giants have leverage since he's under contract next year.
Yeah, they do. I just was under the thought that it would cost somebody a little further down your pipeline. Again, maybe. I was even thinking, again, somebody a little lower, like maybe like the Arroyo range, like past that first real wave of guys.
That's interesting. I'm honestly not sure. Like I would say the numbers and perception are very different.
Yeah, they are. And again, I don't know what the rest of the league values LaMonte Wade at. Do Jerry and Justin want to trade for a platoon left-handed bat? I don't know either. He's complicated. I would be very, very interested. I'd be happy if they acquired him, but he is a complicated trade piece.
Yeah, certainly. I agree on that. So now that we've gotten to the end of this list, is there one guy, if you were to circle back, that would be your number one?
Are we excluding Wade out of this since he's a little different?
I think LaMonte Wade's a pretty obvious number one. Besides that,
I'd probably say Danny Jansen. I was thinking about Conforto. I was thinking about Randy, but it makes the most sense for not having to give up much at all in a trade, and the fact you get Cal off his feet, and the fact you're not relying on Garver to catch, and it's a real bat with room to go get an A-level bat, because acquiring Danny Jansen should not be your headline bat. That is very much a move that you can make to augment the roster, but to really level it up, you go get another bat that's better than Jansen.
I agree. I 100% agree. So Danny Jansen, pack your bags. You're coming to Seattle. Thank you very much. Okay, that was a good discussion. Now, let's go down. You got anything else to say?
Super quick. Just call to action to all of you listening. All I was going to say is, if there is anybody we left off, tell us who. Who is somebody under the radar you would like to see the Mariners trade for? Or who's somebody we didn't mention that you think should be on this list? Tell us. Now, leave the A-level guys off the list, because, again, if you want to hear about the A-level trade guys, go back 2 weeks ago and listen to that podcast episode. But under the radar guys, let us know. Like, for example, we didn't talk about Yandy Diaz. We didn't talk about Bryan De La Cruz from the Marlins. That's a name that's been floated out there a little bit. If you've got some names that you have in mind that we didn't talk about, tell us. Maybe they'll be on the next episode.
Yeah, let's go down on the farm now. All right, Lyle, who's your standout Mariners minor leaguer?
So we talked about Logan Evans at the start of the show, right? And how he's transitioning to the bullpen. Mariners need some bullpen help. Here's another guy that isn't being talked about a lot right now that could absolutely help this bullpen post All-Star break. His name's Troy Taylor. He's in Double-A Arkansas right now, right-handed pitcher, has a fastball in the mid to upper 90s, and also has a good slider. Two-pitch guy, 22 years old, so young, but he is a reliever. Here's what he's done this year, because he started in Everett, then he got promoted up. For the year, Troy Taylor has an 0.9 ERA. He's had 8 outings in Double-A so far, has not given up a run. He's given up just 2 hits, and he has an 0.85 whip for the season. So allow me to say this again. Could the Mariners go acquire a bullpen arm? Absolutely. Is Logan Evans going to be up on the roster? Sure seems like it now. But if you want another bullpen arm that could really provide some reinforcements to this bullpen in the second half for a team that's probably going to need it, I would circle Troy Taylor. I would keep that eye on him, because he is dominated in Everett. He's dominating right now in Arkansas. And once you're in Arkansas, especially as a reliever, you're one call away from the big leagues. There's no reason Troy Taylor can't be on this roster this year.
The Mariners can monitor the trade market and look at what the price of a reliever is, but they have now two, it seems like, more obvious options in-house of what they would promote. I don't know if Troy Taylor's next to come up, but hearing the way they talk about him, it seems likely that him and Logan will see some time in the pen this year. And I know Carlos Vargas, last time we checked on him in AAA, was not doing great, but I know entering the season, the Mariners had thought highly of him. So, like, there are still options within the system, and Troy's certainly one of them, and he is earning the respect that he's getting. It will be easier for the Mariners to call up somebody from the minor leagues to fill a bullpen spot than potentially overpay for a bullpen arm. I don't consistently say, like, I don't see Jerry overpaying for a bullpen arm. So if he wants the higher upside guy, it probably is in-house. So it's going to be Logan or Troy, ultimately.
Yeah. I cannot see Jerry and Justin giving up one of their upper echelon prospects for Ryan Helsley. That just doesn't seem like a Jerry DiPoto type move.
Yeah, Ryan Helsley would be fun, but yeah,
very fun.
I agree.
Could you see them giving up somebody within their top 5 to 6 prospects for him? I couldn't.
No, and I'm going to explain why, because my on the farm Mariners number 5 prospect, who I can't believe we haven't talked about yet, Felnine Celestin, is casually having an over 900 OPS in his first 22 pro games in the Complex League as an 18-year-old. No big deal. Switch hitting, shortstop, just crushing the ball, controlling the strike zone, 13 walks, 17 strikeouts. Yeah, he's going to be in Modesto soon. Just count it down. It's happening.
Dude. Again, I'm not going to put comps on anybody because it's not fair, but I will say it in this way. Just like how I said a couple weeks ago with Laz, the way he's hit in Modesto has looked like Yordan Alvarez, even though I'm not saying he's going to be Yordan in the big leagues. The way Felnine's playing in the Complex League right now, he looks like Francisco Lindor. Like switch hitter, shortstop, power, speed. He's nuts.
He's a guy that would make you feel more comfortable trading one of your other shortstop prospects. Knowing that guy's in your system and knowing that you feel more comfortable that he's untouchable, you would be more comfortable trading someone else.
Yep.
Which is crazy to think about all these shortstops in the systems. The last point here that's kind of funny. You and I were talking about the Haniger trade earlier today. It's like, man, I wonder what Robbie Ray's doing. Well, Felnine had a hit off of Robbie Ray earlier this week. So that's what Robbie Ray is doing right now.
Yeah. It says a lot about Felnine. Let's do this one little fun exercise, too, before we move on, because we were talking about this. Who do you think the Mariners would be least likely or least willing to part ways with in a trade? The 3 guys I said, like, throw out what the third-party prospect systems have, all that. Like, I mean, go from your gut. What do you think? My guess is the 3 guys they are least willing to part with are Colt, Emerson, Felnine, and Laz. I would say those 3 guys are the guys they want the most.
That would be my 3. I would say I think the top 2 might be a little more solidified than top 3, but the top 2 is Colt and Felnine.
Right.
I think like both those guys, when they get in the swing of things, are Colt this week's now a top 15 prospect. Felnine in a year will be a top 15 prospect.
Right.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Laz has the issue that he's not an up the middle guy, and eventually will probably land at DH.
Yeah.
But the other 2, are pretty solid. And then I think Johnny's the one after that.
Sure. For sure. Yeah, and I was going to say that is the thing with Laz, is obviously he has to hit to have value, since he's probably not going to play the field a whole ton in his career. Maybe he'll play first base at some point. We'll see. Maybe he learns first base and can do that. But just in the sense of throwing Laz in there, in the sense of if he hits and if he projects how people are projecting him and plays like it, again, that has the chance to be a lethal bat, which is why I feel like they probably want to keep him close.
Isn't it funny how we didn't even mention 2 other top 30 prospects, Cole Young and Harry Ford, who are at the highest levels of the minors right now? But the reason we didn't mention them is because whenever you and I are bringing up these trade targets, and it's like, all right, put together a package, and it's usually going to include one of those 2 guys. So not exactly untradeable, unfortunately.
Even though, like, that's just what happens in in baseball, sometimes guys get traded. We don't know if they're going to get traded, but if you're just asking what TJ and I's guesses are for who the Mariners are most likely to hold on to, I would guess it's those guys.
Yeah.
So with that, Russell Wilson Umpire of the Week time. We have some requests from the fans, from the listeners. We got some messages on Twitter this week saying, oh, the Russell Wilson ump of the week is going to go hard this week because we have a special shout out to Hunter Wendelstedt, who has been on this program before, who's been on this segment before. But after his horrendous start the other night in the first inning between the Mariners and A's, and in a game in which he looked like he was essentially guessing what were balls and strikes, paired with people on Twitter saying, oh, this guy has to be the winner this week. Fans spoke. We listened. He's our winner. Congratulations, Hunter Wendelstedt.
And overall for the game, actually a solid performance. But because of that first inning, and I think there's a little bit of carryover effect from what he did to Aaron Boone, that he just had to have another appearance. I think it just made it easier. Once you embarrass yourself like you did when you tossed Aaron Boone out of a game for something a fan said, that makes your bar for appearing on this award a whole lot lower.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. So, sure, there was probably some carryover. But again, paired with fans speaking and us being a podcast of the people, men of the people, we listen. Hunter Wendelstedt's our winner. And guess what? You deserve it. Like, again, he really did look like he was guessing half the time with calling balls and strikes the other night.
It was not consistent.
No. I do want to give a shout out, though, to, I want to make sure I get the umpire's name right here on Thursday for Thursday's game, because this thing that happened with Bryan Woo when there was a pitch clock violation called on him, when the home plate umpire literally had his back turned to Woo, that was crazy. Did you pick up on that today?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my God. So let's make sure we get the umpire's name right, because same series, it's Wendelstedt's crew, but it was Nick Marley today. And Woo was pissed about it. You saw him like barking at the umpire for good reason. He has back turned to Woo and says pitch clock violation when he didn't even have his eyes set on the pitcher. So shout out to you, Nick Marley.
I'm sure there will be plenty of accountability for that harmless mistake.
Well, there always is. There always is, isn't there?
Let's close out the show now with Speak Your Mind. What is on your mind this week, Lyle?
We talked about it for a minute before we started recording, but the NBA Finals reminds me of two things. Number one, despite us obviously wanting the Sonics back, I don't get juiced up for the NBA Finals, to be honest. I watch, but I just feel like it's so watered down from how it used to be. It's just, again, for whatever reason, I don't get as excited anymore. And I got excited in years where the Sonics weren't here anymore, too, for a long time. It's just in recent years, not as much. Paired with Boston sports fans, or as we like to call them, massholes, remind us that they continue to just be the most insufferable fans in sports.
No, yeah, I mean, shed a tear when a Boston sports team does not make a finals in any one of the four major sports in a given year. Oh, so difficult.
Yeah.
So difficult. Welcome to reality, except there is no reality because the Celtics are in the finals right now. So, and just a casual, 30-point, they won, I think, game one. They were up 30 in the first half when we hit record here. So just a story of trial and hardship and adversity and all this stuff, man.
So my dad gave me a hard time about this back when we had Jared Carrabis on, and the next time we have him on, I mean, he did say he's down to come back on, so I'm sure at some point we'll have him back on. I need to be better about calling him out for something if we hear something that's a little questionable, because what my dad said we should have given him a hard time about and we didn't was when Carrabis was sitting on this very program and talking about how, being a Red Sox fan these days sucks and they just lose. Well, this plays right into the topic we're talking about here, which, like, a Boston sports fans complaining that they've seen 4 championships in their lifetime and now for a couple of years it's been hard. Like, the next time Carrabis is on, I'm going to circle back with this and I'm going to say, like, you're on a Mariners podcast, right? Like, so yeah,
you're talking about only 4 championships in your lifetime, a couple losing to. Yeah, pal. How about 5 trips to the playoffs? Period.
Ever. So we love Carabas. This is nothing. This has nothing to do with Carabas. He's a friend of the pod. We loved having him on. He might be my favorite guest we've ever had on, and we want to have him on a bunch more in the future. But I'm sure he'll take it well too, because he tosses out shit on a daily basis. So this all plays in. The next time he's on, one, I'm going to remind him, and number two, Boston sports fans, especially if you're on social media, seeing him watch these finals, oh my God, it's terrible.
I'm still like, to watch the NBA finals again, like, I'm going to have to probably live in a more populated area with, like go out to a sports bar or something. Like, I don't know if at home I'm going to flip on the NBA finals. Like the Sonics, when they come back, will have to be playing in it for me to like really care. I will. It's either that or I will have had to, because the Sonics are back, gotten a lot more reinvested back in the NBA. Because right now, again, like, storylines are cool, but you and I both know the Celtics are like way better than the Mavericks, and it showed in game one.
Right.
So, yeah, like, what's the mystery and the intrigue of this series?
Look, I'm gonna watch, but it doesn't mean I watch every year. It doesn't mean I'm absolutely juiced up about it. I am a sports fan. When there's big events on, I watch, and like, again, I've watched an okay amount of the NBA playoffs this year, and most years I do, but doesn't mean I'm like absolutely fired up the way I would be to watch the college football playoff, the NFL playoffs, the World Series, obviously, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm like different than you. Like I can count on one hand how many NBA games I've watched this year. Like, I'll pay attention to headlines, but especially with this, I don't have time.
Yeah. Okay. I don't watch in the regular season, but I'll watch in the playoffs.
WWE on hardwood. Scripted, all coming from the top.
Oh, it's scripted. The best headlines in the NBA are the ones that happen off the court, because off the court there's more drama than a soap opera.
Which is why people are so entertained with this finals. It has nothing to do with on the court. It is literally Kyrie versus the city of Boston.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's stuff like that draws, which baseball could use a lot more of, to be honest. I've thought about that. If there was more beef and if there was beef in baseball, you don't think that would draw more eyeballs?
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Well, Tim Anderson was good. Then he could beef with the city of Cleveland. But like, even that's the example. Like, what are the villains? Tommy Pham is a villain in baseball right now. Like, who gives a fuck about Tommy Pham?
Well, don't say that, or he's going to get ready to fight you.
Yeah, what is he training multiple fighting styles in the offseason just in case?
That could have been a speak your mind this week, is Tommy Pham saying that he's going to beat somebody up if they start anything with them.
Did you notice how when he slid in, he actually walked away from the confrontation? No one was holding it back. He could have swung on someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm almost feeling, Lyle, like that was just talk and not actually backing it up.
Yeah. Well,
people always like to say how tough they are. But, like, remember, like, he could have walked up and punched William Contreras in the face if he wanted to.
Yeah. We need Shohei or Bryce Harper to come out with some quotes in the playoffs saying whatever team they're going to go up against is a bunch of losers or something like that.
Well, Shohei did get his publicity this year, but not in the fighting sense.
And not because he wanted it. He, like, again, Shohei coming out and saying and talking trash about another team, that's real drama. Like Shohei did not ask for his interpreter to place all these bets.
Well, at least Ippei knows now that he's not the worst baseball bettor in the world.
Oh, that's true.
Because that title will go to the guy that just got banned for life on the Padres. What percent of the bets did he win, Lyle? Was it 2%?
Yeah, something like that.
That's insane. 2%?
Yeah. Crazy.
How that should not be possible.
No, it should not.
Wow.
Oh,
do you know what's even more improbable, though? My speak your mind. Do you know we're a cricket country now? Do you know that?
Apparently.
We're great at a lot of things here in America, sports-wise especially. We have our football. We're the best at that. We're the best at football. We're the best at basketball. Sometimes we're the best at hockey. Well, the fact that the Canada hasn't had a Stanley Cup since 91. Yeah, let's say we're the best at hockey as well. Well, Lyle, the U.S. beat a cricket powerhouse in the Men's World Cup, Pakistan, today. One of the biggest upsets in sports history. USA, USA, USA.
Is this a bigger upset than when Howard beat UNLV in college football as 45-point underdogs? Do you remember that?
I do.
Is this bigger?
In the sense of the world stage, yeah. I don't know if in terms of like a Vegas money line bet. I think it was only like plus 600. But, you know, like Pakistan, India, Australia, like those are powerhouse cricket countries.
Mm-hmm.
Powerhouse. Like cricket, by the way, as most people know, is the biggest sport in the world. Or sorry, second biggest, I think, behind soccer or football, whatever you want to say. Football, second biggest sport in the world. It draws enormous ratings. I think it even outdraws the Super Bowl in American football. Like that's how big it is. And it, as you know, in the state of American sports, like cricket's not very high. But the fact the U.S. beat one of the powerhouses, I mean, that's like, it's like the U.S. men's national team losing to Trinidad and Tobago. Oh, wait. Sorry, wrong sport. That's like, I want to make a joke about the Team USA basketball team, who probably has lost to some small countries recently, but I can't name those off the top of my head outside of the men's soccer one. Regardless, you get the point. Pretty historic upset today. So,
yeah. Shout out cricket. That's all I've got because I didn't watch it. I don't know much about it, but shout out cricket.
Yeah. So, you know, the joke that was floating around this week on the internet where it was like showing some cricket highlights and it's like the American brain cannot comprehend this. And I forget what someone responded with. I think it was like a Justin Jefferson one-handed catch or something like the European mind or the Australian mind can't comprehend this, something funny like that. And then this happens. So obviously we can comprehend it because we're the best.
Apparently, shout out USA cricket. That's all I've got. Like I said, like that's about all I can contribute to this one. So
one of the Team USA's top players is his full-time job. He's like a principal engineer at Oracle, like a software company. Like software employees beat Team Pakistan.
Yeah. It's like how they say Babe Ruth used to dominate against milkmen in baseball who had off-season jobs. But, oh, wait, Babe Ruth's not real. So, no, he didn't.
Right. Exactly.
Forgot. So, yeah. All right. That just about wraps up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, leave a written review. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out on social media too. You can find us wherever you're on socials, on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube Shorts, at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.